you poke the little box for me?
Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Padam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sara Tvameva Tvameva Vidyan Ravikam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Yata sarvani bhutani pratibhanti stithani cha yatraivo pashamam yanti tasmai satyatmane namaha. So we are continuing in the story of Leela. And because Umaji is here for the first time, we'll do just a little short review. So, there is this woman, Leela. She's a princess. And she's married to this very comely, handsome king, Padma. She really loves him. And she thinks, if I die first, that's okay. But if he dies first, I just can't bear it. So this is a literary device now. She does tapas and propitiates the goddess Saraswati. Saraswati shows up and says, my daughter, I am pleased with your tapas. You may ask what you wish. So Leela says, I have two requests. The first is, if my husband dies before me, let his soul not leave the body. And request number two, when I call upon you, you come and help him. Many, many years pass. Both Padma and Leela are old. And sure enough, Padma dies first. So instead of taking him to the cremation ground, she does what the goddess has instructed and makes a bed of flowers and puts the corpse on the flowers. And then she calls on Saraswati to come. She comes and she says, I'm so distraught. Where is my husband? Where is his soul? And Saraswati says, okay, you come with me. So she takes the subtle body out of the physical body, and they go to this hall in the sky, the space of consciousness. And in this hall, there Padma is, 16 years old, looking pretty good. And Leela says, how can this be? And then the goddess says, well, let me tell you what happened. Years ago, there was a sage whose name was Vashishta. Of course, this is very funny because Vashishta is supposedly the author of the story, the book. And he had a wonderful wife, Arundhati. And they were very, very good Brahmins. But one day, Vashishta's in the second story of his house. He looks out the window and a king passes by. All is wretched. And Vashishta says, oh, it would be so much better if I had been a king. And Saraswati says, in fact, your husband Padma is just that sage Vashishta, who, because of his son Kalpa, this intense desire for money, wealth, and power, came back as a king. And you, Leela, are simply Arundhati, come back to help him out. And so the goddess has now begun the teaching on the origin of the world. Now, this is very advanced teaching. Yoga Vashishta asks us to address 3 questions. The first, Koham, who am I? And we have so many scriptures that address last night, 13th chapter of Gita. Who am I? I am the knower of the field, not the field. Texts like Dritrisha Viveka, Aparokshanubhuti, so many of them deal with this discrimination between the self and the not self. Is that all understandable to everybody? But that's not the end of the journey. When we have called our identity out, I am that witnessing consciousness. I'm not the body. I'm not the energy. I'm not the feelings. I'm not the thoughts. I'm not even the ego sense. Aham Brahmasmi. I am that partless Brahman. Now, what about the not self? I'm sorry. We lied. There is no not self. So the second question that we deal with is, what is this world? Third question, how is it come about? So the goddess has started the teaching, and the scripture introduces us to a technical term, sankalpa. Is this a term you're familiar with, Uma?
Yes.
Is it a Hindi word as well?
Yeah.
What's it mean in Hindi?
Sankalp means you think what you want to do.
Yes. In Sanskrit,
What was she saying? You think what you want to do?
Yes.
Sure.
But that's just the Hindi. That's the modern understanding. Sanskrit, it's much deeper and it's much richer. It means wish, will, intention, thought, a purpose. All of that is wrapped up in this word sankalpa. And what the goddess has told Leela is that we're going to look at this sankalpa macrocosmically and microcosmically. Macrocosmically, the entire creation is nothing but the sankalpa of the infinite. It is Ishvara who intends, who wills. What's his name? Ichiti. He who wishes, he who wills, he who intends is Ishvara. He has no body, and his will is infinite, and nothing can contradict it. It orders the universe. Now, the corollary, or let me back up, the law of sankalpa is this. Any sankalpa that is consistently maintained, doesn't stop, that is not contradicted or conflicted, tends towards manifestation, or more accurately, tends towards grossification. So whatever Ishvara intends becomes what we perceive as the phenomenal world. But microcosmically, we have a limited ability to reenact that creative process of the infinite. So my sankalpa, if it doesn't contradict Ishvara's, if it's consistently maintained and isn't contradicted or conflicted by, because my mind is so mercurial, it will tend towards grossification. Now, one of the big differences between the individual sankalpa and the sankalpa of the Lord, entropy. If we stop intending, it just starts to dissolve. You have to keep at it. Lord, oh, his sankalpa lasts for billions of years. So if you've got a project at work or a creative endeavor, understanding this law of sankalpa changes the way we approach it. Now, one of the things that is fascinating, the Lord has a mechanism that keeps most of us from messing up, from screwing up the creation, because most people have no idea that their deep intention is creative. So they literally use the law of sankalpa to disempower their own minds. My mind isn't powerful. My mind doesn't make any difference. I can think whatever I want and it doesn't hurt or harm anybody. And the Lord goes, yes. But a yogi, understanding the law of sankalpa, understanding that we participate in, we are the mechanism by which one small part of the universe comes into being. God doesn't create the universe at us and to us, but as us and through us. It's a huge, huge group endeavor. But the yogi starts to pay attention to the content of their mind. You don't want to be afraid of your mind. Oh, I had a negative thought. Oh my God, something terrible is going to happen. No. It's not your surface opinions. It's the deeply rooted convictions. But Trevor, you and I have had these discussions about if you get caught on obsessive thinking on some part of your life, and you really don't want to be thinking that, because at some point it's going to start to grossify. It's going to start to show up and manifest. Is that making sense? Mm-hmm. And this is where it comes from, this law of Sankalpa. So the corollary to the law of Sankalpa, what's the law of Sankalpa? Any thought, will, wish, intention, Sankalpa consistently maintained that isn't contradicted or conflicted tends towards grossification. The corollary, where the power is what I call the law of the third eye. You want to see your third eye is kind of like a flashlight, a torch. Don't they call it a torch in India?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you're out riding a bicycle at night, who rides a bicycle at night? Anybody? Do you have a helmet with a lamp on it? Anybody?
I used to, and yeah, you have like a.
It's like a headlamp.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can turn your head and shine on stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Miner's lamps on the helmet, on the hard hat. So this law of the third eye is like that headlamp. What you look at, meaning what you pay attention to, you're going to think about. What you look at repeatedly, you're going to think about repeatedly. Listen carefully. Repeated thought becomes habituated thought. So the time that you spend thinking about this stuff, the cosmic law doesn't care. It just acts. It's like if you plant a rose seed, you get a rose bush. You plant marigolds, you get marigolds. The ground doesn't care. It just acts on the seed. Does that make sense? Cosmic law doesn't care what you're thinking about. It just acts on it. It tends to grossify. Whatever you look at, you're going to think about. What you look at repeatedly, you're going to think about repeatedly. Repeated thought becomes habituated thought. We call these sanskaras. They get very deep, vast. That level, they sink into the unconscious and become the law. You may know people who have low self-esteem. I'm a terrible person. I'm ugly. I can't accomplish this. I'm somehow damaged or broken. Maybe you and I have times when we've thought those thoughts. So the law of Sankalpa goes, yes. But if on the other hand, your habituated thinking is, Om Namah Shivaya. I surrender myself to Lord Shiva, to consciousness itself. Or maybe in English, I live and move and have my being in God. Ganesha Sharanam, Sharanam Ganesha. God is my shelter in the waters. So this is part of being woke as a yogi. In the beginning, we're spending a lot of time changing our relationship with our thinking. I am not my thoughts. But now the yogi wants to understand that, okay, I'm going to think when I'm out there in the world. Unless I'm a sannyasi living in a cave, I'm going to have a job, I may have a family, I've got responsibilities, I have things to do. But we can begin to use this creative process in our life. Now, when you are working with sankalpa, and this is very advanced teaching, it must always begin and end with a deep understanding, a meditation on shunyata. Shunyata means emptiness or voidness. We're just dealing with dream shaping. If, on the other hand, you're caught up in the fundamental fruit of ignorance, I'll be happy when, it'll be better if, oh, I'm so lonely, I want a partner. Or, oh, if only I had $1 million. I see $1 million happening right now. Oh, yes, I'm going to propitiate Lakshmi. You know, then you're just another desire of desires. You're still caught in the web, the Jagat Jala, the web of the world. So always for a yogi, yes, this world is a dream, but it doesn't have to be a nightmare. So, this teaching on sankalpa is to indicate what is this world and how is it come about. So this is where we've left off in the teaching of the goddess. So she's taken Leela into the sky of consciousness and kind of left it. You used to be Arundhati. Now the other thing's going to happen. We don't want to think of incarnation as a linear process. In many of these stories, he's going to kind of mix realities, like dreams within dreams within dreams. And it's very confusing on purpose. Because it's all just mind. It's all just the play of Maya. Ishvara is the Mahamayavi, great illusionist. It's usually translated as juggler, I don't know why, but it means an illusionist. All right, does anybody remember what verse we're on?
33.
That's what I have. 33, page 36.
page 36, verse
Yes.
33.
Yes.
Will you help us out, please, Ganesh?
Yeah, I'll be back in a
I can
second.
have Puneet chant if you wish.
I just got to get my book. 1 second.
We'll let Puneet do it. Go ahead, Puneet, page 33. Is that right?
Yeah, I got it.
Verse 36.
Other way around.
Other way around, Jim. Yeah, page 36,
Huh?
verse 30. Page 36, verse 33. Other way around.
All right, page 36, verse 33. Go.
Vasanatanavam nunam yada te sthiti meshyati tada tibahiko bhava punareshyati dehake. When the thinking or shedding of mental impressions shall certainly arrive at your natural state, then the notion of the subtle or the spiritual will again appear in the body.
Yes. So, vasana tanava means thinning of mental impressions. We tune up the mind. We let go of all of our attachments to all enjoyments and miseries, and let go of any idea of self. We thin the mind. Then the dreamlike nature of the phenomenal world starts to be revealed. This teaching that the phenomenal world is like a dream is not just philosophy. It is rooted in the experience of the yogi. As your mind thins, the world gets more and more like just a transparency. In Vivekachudamani, Shankara says, the annihilation of the vasanas here and now is considered liberation. That's the thing to be done. All of yoga is just some form, various techniques for vasana exhaustion, vasana purgation. That's all that needs to be done. All right, next verse.
What is thinning of the mind?
The thinning of the mind means I have fewer thoughts, fewer attachments, fewer ideas of the personal sense of self. What Swamiji used to call tuning up the mind. Did we get a little clearer?
Yes.
Very good question. Next verse.
Vasanat anave tasmat guru yatnam anindate tasmin prodhi upayate jivan mukta bhavishyasi. Therefore, faultless lady, take effort in shedding mental impressions. When perfection is reached in this effort, you will become liberated while alive.
Yes. So, what is a vasana? Let's review. Vasana is a subset of sanskara in the Shankara tradition. In our study of Yoga Sutra, he pretty much equates them. A sanskara is just an impression. Do you know that that's a table? The way you know that is an impression. You were taught it. by and large, those kinds of impressions are not problematic. But there's a subset of sanskara. And I think that's also, sankhara is the Goenka, the Vipassana.
The Pali version.
A vasana is an impression left in the unconscious as the result of previously performed egoistic actions, meaning it involves I-ness and mindness. So, for example, Vinay, how did you guys get here tonight?
We drove.
Your car? Yes. What kind of car do you have? It's a Golf, Volkswagen Golf. Now, if you heard a car alarm going off outside and it was clear that it wasn't your car, well, that's too bad. Not a big deal. Do you know what your car alarm sounds like? Where'd you park?
Right outside.
If right outside you heard a smash and the car alarm go off, oh my God, they just broke the window in my car. I-ness and mindness. Or someone says, you're a terrible person. You're have a horrible character. You know, you are sinful. You will. It's because I think that's true about me. How do we get these vasanas? This is the process. We engage in the world and we either enjoy or we have an aversive experience. And then after the fact, we engage in what we call chintya. I think that means worry in Hindi, right?
Yes.
In Sanskrit, it means after the fact mental rumination about an event. So it can be positive or negative. So you do a project work and you get all these accolades. Then if in your mind you go, oh, that was really good. I'm so glad everybody liked it. I guess I'm doing really well at this job. That's also chintya. And that sows vasana. Now, do you remember when he was a toddler?
Yes.
Little 1-year-old, 2-year-old? Can you remember?
Yes.
Did he ever play with toys and then all of a sudden he got distracted and they just stayed, he went off and did something else? And there they were. It's like he'd forgotten them. Remember that?
Yes.
No vasana. Child's mind doesn't start that until 3, 4, right around in there. These impressions. That's why we can't remember our early childhood. Didn't leave an impression. You take a baby and it's just howling. You thinking, my God, it's excruciating. Then you take your keys and you're like this. Ever seen a baby do that? All that anguish and pain or anger, gone. No chintya. Therefore, no vasana. So we need to regain the capacity to be in the now and not let events leave an impression. Swamiji used to say, put your mind where your hands are working. That very, very famous saying that Ram Dass coined, be here now. Let go of the past. Stay out of the unborn future. Totally present to the now. Exhaust our existing vasanas without creating new ones. Easy to say, not so easy to do. So again, an enormous amount of practice is implied here. What Saraswati is saying to Leela. Just do this. And so for the sake of the story, she does it pretty quickly. But for you and me, oh, this can take time. This is the tapas that we need to do. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
It's a new section. Brahma Abhyasa, the practice of the realization of Brahman or the Supreme Spirit. Lilovacha atropa kurute druhi kobhyasa kidrishotyatthava sakatham poshamayati pushte tasmishcha kim bhavet. Leela said, tell me which or else of what kind is the practice that helps here in the realization of Brahman? How does it undergo advancement? What happens when it is grown?
So she's now been shown this great goal of human life. When we begin the spiritual life, frequently, it's because something in our lives isn't working. It's theoretically possible to grow spiritually through inspiration. Few of us do. Most of us come to the spiritual life because something isn't working in our lives. Dissatisfied, could be a relationship, could be an illness, it could be a tragic loss. That's fine. Good news is the Lord doesn't care. But if you think about it, what I'm looking for is like a super Band-Aid, something to put on my wounds so I can get about the business of living. If we continue, the whole thing turns upside down. And we see actually the goal of human life is God consciousness. It's self-realization. My job, my marriage, my experiences are what I need to work through. This is where my attachments and aversions are. So then everything becomes useful to the yogi. Now, the goddess has put this out as the goal of life for Leela. Leela says, I'm down with that. How do I get there? So now we get abhyasa. Abhyasa means practice. Going on.
Devyovacha tachintantam tatkathanam anyonyam tat prabodhanam etat ekatvam cha tadhyasam vidur buddha. The goddess said, thinking of that, talking of that, instructing one another of that, and having this as the one highest goal, wise men consider these as the practice for realizing that.
Yes. So going back to our teaching on Sankalpa, what the invitation here is to develop what we call subeja, auspicious desire. Listen very carefully. The mind prefers the familiar. It will frequently prefer the familiar to the good. For example, if you are the child of an alcoholic, you have a 50% chance of either becoming an alcoholic or, wait for it, marrying one. Why in God's name would some youngster marry a drunk? Because it's familiar. Don't do it consciously. How many women end up, at least in the West, it's not an arranged marriage, marrying their father? They marry somebody just like their dad. Or young men marry their mother. They pick somebody just like their mom. Why? Because it's familiar. Now, if they come from a dysfunctional home where there's abuse or dysfunction, fortunately, we tend to pick people like. In the Hebrew scripture, there's a saying, the sins of the fathers are visited upon the sons, even to the second and third generation. This has nothing to do with ritual purity. It means these family dysfunctions get handed down generation to generation. You can change it. You don't have to become the bad parent you have. You can change it. Because all it is a sankalpa. So, the mind prefers the familiar. It prefers the familiar frequently to the good. What this verse is saying is what we need to do is make the good familiar. Remember our law. What you look at, you're going to think about. What you look at repeatedly, you're going to think about repeatedly. Repeated thought becomes habituated thought. Habituated thought sinks into the unconscious. That becomes the law of my life. So in this verse, it says, turn your mind to God. Turn your mind to the infinite. What are the pragmatic tools to do this? There's a list. So we list them for us again in English. First one,
Thinking of that.
yes. Let it consume your mind. Become what we call a mumukshu. What is mumukshutva?
Seeker.
Burning desire for liberation. I'm just a little bit. I don't seek just on Fridays. It has to fill my mind all the time. Thinking of God. How can I do that? Now you can play spiritual music, play chants, have a mantra. That's in Gita. Krishna will call japa the king of yogas. What's japa? Chanting. It's silent repetition of a mantra. Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. Doesn't matter what it is. Something to turn our mind to the end. Next idea.
Talking of that,
Yes. So we have this tradition of pravachana. We share with one another. We talk about it. One of the things that Swamiji did when he founded the Chinmaya mission is he would set up these study groups. Oh, but there's no teacher there. Don't need it. Get together, group of people. We stumble our way through the scriptures. We sharpen our understanding. We help one another. The very last line of the Taittiriya Upanishad has this repeated chant. Swadhyaya pravachanecha, swadhyaya pravachanecha. What's swadhyaya? Self-study. Your own study of scripture. And pravachana, teaching one another, talking about it with one another. Next one, next idea.
instructing one another.
Yes, same idea. We have the great punya, the great merit to have a good teacher who's shrotriyam, well versed in the scripture, meaning they wield one of these valid means of knowledge. Himself or herself is a full knower of the Supreme who has retired into the Supreme. Who's a friend to those who have surrendered. And we're very lucky. Next idea.
Having this as the one highest goal.
Yeah. Now, in Viveka Chudamani, in his discussion of the qualifications of a fit student, Shankar will say, who can argue for the scriptures and refute arguments against them. This doesn't mean you do data battles, scripture battles at cocktail parties. It means, where do you think this argument takes place? My own mind. Why? Because the world out there will say, the one with the most cash and prizes wins in life. The one with the fanciest car wins. The one with the biggest house wins. The one with the fanciest title is better. So we have to say, no, it's not for me. I choose a different path. Is that it?
Yeah.
All right. Any questions about this? All right, next verse.
Well, I was gonna say that.
Atyanta.
Oh, never mind.
Please, go ahead.
This always reminds me of that saying, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. From Einstein, it seems like, this whole verse that you've been talking about, the will personified in the familiar and doing the same stuff that we seek out, that you were talking about. But it just seems like everyone thought that was so profound when Einstein said it, because we all do it. Like you're saying, it's all, all our behavior is just repeated behavior, basically.
But we want to change the repeated repeated behavior. That's the
Yes,
point, Justin.
I understand that's the point of this verse, but I was saying before, that's why you're saying turn your mind to the infinite and turn your mind to the, the burning desire for liberation. Yeah, try and change the thinking. Yeah, no, I understand. Thank you. Sorry.
All right, going on.
Atyantha bhava sampattau jnato gneyasya vastunah yuktya shastraihi atyante yete brahma bhyasina sthiraha. Those who strive by reasoning and by scriptures in the accomplishment of the complete non-existence of the known objects and the knower, they are the firm practitioners of the realization of Brahman, the ultimate reality.
Yes. So first comes Shravana. We hear the truth. In our modern day, we can also hear with our eyes. We can read the books and the commentaries. Then comes Mananam. What's Mananam? We think about it. We reason it. Real spirituality is profound common sense. Real spirituality never asks us to believe in something that ultimately is not verifiable. When we reason this through, we get what the scriptures call paroksha jnana, indirect knowledge. I'm convinced. That then becomes the engine for nididhyasana, for practice, long and continuous meditation. Question? Or you just scratch it? Any thoughts on this verse? Swamiji went up to Rishikesh and his initial goal was to bust the gurus. He was a Marxist. He was an atheist. He thought this was all superstition. So he goes to Shivananda and says, all this God worship stuff, it's all superstition. You know what Shivananda said? You are right. But there's a deeper truth. And he introduced him to the Vedanta. We have aparoksha jnana, direct experience. Or if I do this mantra, I'll get lots of money. Goham, who are you? What is this world? How does it come about? These are the things to be known. Going on.
Sargadavev nopannam drishyam nastayev tat sada idam jagat aham cheti bodhasbhyasam vidupare. The seen or the visible universe was not born even at the beginning of creation. That does not exist at all, always. This world and I are in the supreme, end quote. Awakening to this truth is known as the practice of knowledge.
Yes. So, what is this phenomenal world? It comes about in the same way a dream does. If you understand the dream state, then Vedanta becomes very simple. You are the god of your dream. You become mini Ishvara. Now think. In the dream, my one mind undergoes a very interesting process. First, I fall asleep. Falling asleep can be seen as the non-apprehension of myself as the waker. It is pure ignorance. It's mini maya, avidya, avarana shakti, veiling or covering power. Then what happens? My mind goes, and by means of sankalpa, the dreamer appears. And I have a dream body, which becomes a locus of perception. I peep out of that dream body, get a dream world of name and form. Inside, I have dream thoughts and feelings. And a dream ego, I am identified with that dream body. But in fact, that dream body and all the people, places, things, and conditions, and all my feelings and all the circumstances are nothing but my mind having refracted into all those elements. If I dream about a Great Dane, Great Dane is a dog. When I wake up in the morning, is the dog next to me? Where does the dream dog go when I wake up? Did it ever really exist? All this is like, now listen carefully, Vedanta is not solipsism. Solipsism is where you maintain the reality of your ego, but your world becomes unreal. You don't have people or anything in your world. I am creating everything with my own individual mind. Some new agey people go down that road. It's not what Vedanta teaches. The one who's doing the dreaming is Ishvara. Now, certainly my experience of the world is conditioned by my own mind. But if Puneet goes sound asleep or Puneet gets enlightened, you and I don't disappear. But individuals can wake up from the dream, meaning we see it for what it is. Now, the first step is simply to be open to the possibility that everything that we're seeing is like a movie. It's like a hologram. What do the kids call these things? Virtual realities. Mm-hmm. I was watching this thing on the news. There's a place in Europe where these cows are all in a barn. They're putting virtual reality glasses on the cows to make them see fields and trees. I'm not making this up. The cows are happier and they're making more milk. That's what this is. It's a virtual reality. Now, for the poor cow, if they take the goggles off, there they are in the barn. But ultimately, you take the virtual reality glasses off. All it is pure, undivided consciousness without name and form. And the scriptures thunder, I am Atma Brahma, the self in me, the knower in me, the conscious being, and Brahman, the ultimate consciousness in which the dream of this world takes place. They are the same. Krishna thunders this in the 11th chapter of Gita. Earlier chapter, I think it's in the 4th, he says, all this is strung on me like gems on a thread, Mani Sutra. Oh, that's cool. God is in each one of us. That's an earlier teaching. By the time we get to the 11th chapter, he says, I am not in them, they are in me. Just like all the elements of the dream are in you. Then he says, well, actually, they're not really in me. Why? Because they're all just imagination. Behold my Maya. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Drisya sambhavabodhena ragadveshaदिtanave rati balodita yasau brahmabhyasa sa uchyate. That satisfaction which is strongly produced in the thinning or shedding of love and hate by the knowledge of the non-existence of the seen is called the practice of realization of Brahman.
So there's so much implied here. So again, we're introduced to two technical terms, raga and dvesha. Raga is my attachment, my passion for things. Dvesha is just the flip side of it, aversion. So this is the way my attachment to the world expresses itself. When I am convinced those people, places, things, and conditions, I must have them in order to be happy. We come from a place of spiritual impoverishment. There's not enough. I'm not enough. I need more. I need better. I need different. Or the flip side, I hate my boss. I hate my life. I hate my partner. I want to get rid of all this. I hate where I live. I'm going to move to Chicago. That's spacious. Just the flip side. Just the flip side. So the yogi needs to understand that this raga and this dvesha is simply the mind's reaction to conducive and non-conducive environments. I get what I want. First of all, it's always temporary. Always. And it's just a taste of my self-nature. Do you want some water, dear?
Yeah, I'll go and get.
Did you get it for her, Vinay?
No, I'll go and get.
You know where the glasses are? They're above the microwave. There might be some in the dishtrainer. Raga and Vesha. So we begin to understand the fundamental voidness. Nothing out there is going to make it better, just different. And I love the way Nisargadatta Maharaj frames it. He says, happiness and suffering are the same thing. To the degree that I superimpose on the world happiness, I will suffer. All right, one more.
Tadhyasena nirvanam ityabhyaso mahodayah sambhashyaivam nishayante nirvikalpa samadhina babhuvatu chidakasha rupinyau vyomakakriti. Since liberation is attained by such practice, the practice itself is the supreme fulfillment. Conversing thus in the night, they too, Leela and the goddess, became of the form of the space of consciousness by Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or yogic state of absolute consciousness transcending the differentiation of the knower, knowledge, and the known, and possessed of the bodily form of heavenly beings.
Yes. So here is the enlightenment of Leela, conversing with the goddess. She feels the Shakti from the mother. Mind gets tuned. Dealing with these three questions. Koham, who am I? Aham Brahmasmi, I am that ground of being. What is this world? It's just Leela.
Jim, may I ask a question?
Please.
Hi, it's Catherine. You can you explain again what you had said just before about happiness and suffering or pain being the same thing, please?
Yes. Yes. So we will let the prayer stone here be a stand-in for whatever it is that we like, because each of us have different desires. So I literally create what it is I like. Some people want fast cars, some people want a scooter, some people want a bicycle, some people want this, they want that. So we'll let this be the standard. I call it the widget. So the first step in this process is I determine what's dear to me. What is it that I want, that I think is going to do it? The better job, the partner, the house, or the opposite, dvesha. I want to get rid of the partner. I want to get rid of the house. I want to get rid of the job. So that's called priya, whatever I discern that's dear to me. Then what do? I engage in a process called kartavya. Literally means obligatory actions. It means I'll be happy when, it'll be better if, I'm going to make it happen. So I buy it, I go on one of the apps on Tinder, I get a new job, I put my house on the market and move, or I buy a house. I do all these things based on this idea. This is what's going to make me happy. That condition is called moda. Finally, when I get it, when desire and object of desire become one, that point of pleasure is called pramoda. The fool thinks, The widgets are where it's at. That's what it's about. Give me more widgets. But in actuality, what I've done is momentarily stop the craving of the mind, the underlying restlessness, the discontent, the agitation, the raga and the dvesha. This is the rajasic mind for those of us who've had an exposure to the gunas. But in my ignorance, I associate it with the object. What the yogi begins to understand through direct experience is you don't need to get an experience of the joy of your own being with a medium. This is a mediated experience of my self-nature. We begin to practice having a non-mediated experience, an immediate experience. This is why meditation is so important. If you continue to meditate, and if you continue to let go of attachment to the world, you will have an experience of the peace, the happiness, the bliss of your own self-nature. And no object has caused it. Even if you only have it once, your mind will go, oh, I want to get that again. And the same passion that drove us into the world starts to drive us within. The more we let go of the world, the greater our joy. Did that make it a little clearer?
Yes, that made sense. Thank you.
It's the longing itself that hurts, not the absence of the object. And I can prove it to
Right.
you.
The longing
Everybody
for
loves
the object
sleep.
or the longing for the object to be gone, right?
Yeah, whichever one.
So it's like,
I want it different than it is. Everybody loves a deep sleep. Everybody enjoys a deep sleep. No object has caused the joy of deep sleep. The reason we enjoy deep sleep is the mind is all folded up. It's not jonesing anymore. Wake up in the morning, touch your pillow. Oh, it feels so good. Then the mind starts to come back. Oh, I've got that report to do at work. And oh, I have that meeting. And oh, I had that argument with so-and-so that I've got to clean up. And oh, I don't know how I'm going to pay that bill. And you know that feeling? Then where does the bliss of deep sleep go? Gone. Because the raga and the dvesha have come back. So the yogi deeply experiences this bliss of my own self-nature. Goes by many names. Some of my favorites are Atma Ramana, to revel in the self. The Brahman and the Rasa, the juice or the nectar of the bliss of Brahman. And this is what takes the mind out of the world. Now, there's still happiness in the world. But Krishna says it's like a drop of water on the end of a leaf of grass poured into the ocean. It's pleasurable, but it's a little. It's so little. All right, it's 9 o'clock, it's past. What verse are we on now?
We're going to do 42 next week.
42 next week. We'll end here. I'm sorry I went over. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Now, Uma, some people are sensitive to the other body. If you are, tell me, and I won't light it when you come. Are you sensitive to it?
I think I am.
Right.